welcome back to Oral Communication and Context. This is the continuation of our 9th lesson, which is the fundamentals of public speaking. For part 2 of this lesson, we will now be uncovering the different types of speech according to delivery, as well as the last part of this lesson, which is speech delivery for different situations. Last time, we have talked about the different types of speech according to their purpose, which is informative speech, inspirational speech, argumentative speech, persuasive speech, and entertaining speech. Today, we will be discussing the different types of speech according to delivery. How do you deliver it? First one is reading from a manuscript. We also have memorized speeches. And then we have what we refer to as extemporaneous speeches. And then, of course, last but not the least, we have impromptu speeches. Let's start first with reading from a manuscript. When we say you are simply reading from a manuscript, the material or the speech itself is already written out word for word, and your task as a speaker will just be to simply read it, okay? So you don't have to worry about anything else except, of course, for the way that you are reading it and delivering it. Reading from a manuscript perhaps is the easiest way to deliver a speech. However, there are still a lot of considerations into it. Some speaking situations wherein you just simply have to read from a manuscript include newscasting with a teleprompter or an auto cue device, or when you present legal proceedings and verdict in court, you would notice that the person announcing it is simply reading from a printed copy of the proceedings. All right. And then when you read rules and criteria in a contest, for example, it's all right for you to read from a manuscript. Now, advantages of reading from a manuscript include, number one, you just have to exactly repeat what has been written. So you really do not have to worry much about what you are going to say, especially if the speech has been written for you beforehand. It's also a guided speech, so there could be notes to the printed copy of it or to the written copy of it that you could use as you deliver the speech, or that could be helpful as you deliver the speech. Some disadvantages of reading from a manuscript include it could be a boring and uninteresting presentation, because if a person cannot read as effectively as possible, then definitely it would be difficult to catch the audience's interest, because they would say that you're just simply reading it. Why don't you just give a copy to us and then we'll read it ourselves? So part of being an effective reader is, of course, to make sure that there's life as you read. There's life to your delivery of the speech itself. Another disadvantage could be lacking audience rapport or connection. More often than not, if a speaker is reading from a manuscript, there is lack of eye contact. You cannot maintain that strong, solid eye contact and rapport with the listeners or with the audience, okay? So it's essential that even if you are reading from a manuscript, you still look at your audience from time to time. Some tips that you could consider when you are reading from a manuscript include rehearsing the speech over and over again until you sound natural. In this case, what we simply mean is that when you are given the speech already beforehand, try to read it over and over and over again. In that way, you are getting more and more familiar with the content of the speech itself. So by the time that you deliver it, you are already aware of the flow, you are already aware of the content, okay? So you are more aware of what the speech is all about and how, of course, you could deliver it as smoothly as possible. Another tip that you could work with when you are reading from a manuscript is before you even deliver the speech, as you practice it, try to also observe how accomplished news anchors do it on TV, okay? And try to note how conversational they sound whenever they deliver the news. So you could learn a thing or two from observing other people as well. So you could watch videos, you could watch the news, you could tune in the news for this tip. Next, we have memorized speech. Memorized speech is simply a type of delivery wherein the entire speech is committed to memory. So you have to memorize it word per word. Now, some speaking situations that require memorized speeches is when performers in a stage play act. Okay, they have to memorize their speech because they cannot hold their scripts when they perform on a stage play. Next is whenever you deliver a declamation or rhetorical or even a literary piece. You cannot hold a script on your hand for that one. Another speaking situation that involves memorizing speeches is whenever an actor or an actress in a scene performs a script from memory. So they have to memorize it as well. Some advantages include exact repetitions of the written words, only this time it's from your memory. Now, another advantage of memorized speeches is that since you are not holding on to something, you are free to move around the stage. You are free to move your hands, or you are free to use gestures. Some disadvantages, however, is that when a speech is memorized, there are tendencies for speakers to end up speaking in a monotone pattern, okay? Because they have already committed it to memory. So they would just deliver it as they have committed it to their memory. Alternatively, others might even do it in a faster pace, okay? Because since they already memorized the speech, they can just say the words out loud in a manner that is faster than usual, okay? So you need to make sure that you still have control of your delivery. Another disadvantage of memorizing speeches is when the speaker cannot control his or her stage fright. When this happens, the speaker might have difficulty remembering the memorized speech. Before you even go on stage, you need to make sure that you are relaxed, you are calm, and you know the entire speech. Here are some tips on how you could deliver a memorized speech. First thing that you could do is rehearse the speech over and over again until you sound natural and feel confident. So same as reading from a manuscript, practice will really help you. Observe how actors or actresses perform their script in theater, television, or movie scenes. Another thing that you could do is you could look in front of a mirror and then deliver your memorized speech in front of the mirror. Consider the image that you can see in the mirror as your audience. And of course, it would also help you become more aware of your facial expressions, of your gestures, or even your entire demeanor as you are delivering the memorized speech. Next, we have what we refer to as extemporaneous speeches. It is actually a type of speech that is planned and outlined. However, it's not really committed to memory and it's not really read to. Okay, so it's somewhere in between of memorized speeches and reading from a manuscript. If that is the case, ma'am, how do we deliver an extemporaneous speech? So it is actually the idea that you are taking into consideration, the main idea, the main concept of the speech that you are going to deliver. The goal is not to really memorize the entire speech, but rather be familiar with how these ideas flow and how you are going to express these ideas. Okay, so more often than not, in extemporaneous speeches, you are given a specific topic in advance, and then you are given a specific amount of time to prepare for it. Now, that time is not really enough for you to prepare or write an entire speech, an entire solid speech. Okay, but rather that time is only enough for you to think about the main concepts, the key ideas that you want to present to your audience. And then later on, as you say it out loud, as you deliver your speech, you expound on those ideas, expound on those concepts. Here are some speaking situations that might require you to deliver an extemporaneous speech. So take, for example, if you are a candidate for the student government and you were asked to deliver your campaign speech before a voting public. Another one is when you are assigned to report a topic in class. You don't really create a script for it, okay? But rather, you only take down notes on the key concepts that you want to deliver, and then you need to make sure that you understand the concept itself. So you could expound on it, you could explain more on it later on. Some advantages of delivering speeches extemporaneously is that it helps you look confident because it seems as if you really know what you are talking about. Everything else is coming from you. The explanations are coming from you. Similarly, it also engages the audience. Extemporaneous speeches also allows the audience to agree or disagree with whatever it is you are saying. So therefore, it gives them something to really talk about or really to consider. A disadvantage of using extemporaneous speeches is that you may not have enough time to plan, organize, and even rehearse because usually extemporaneous speeches are given like minutes beforehand, or sometimes you are just simply tapped to do it after some time. All right, some tips that you could use when you are asked to deliver an extemporaneous speech include creating an outline. So for example, if you still have a few minutes or a few seconds left, try to write it down. Try to jot down notes on what you want to deliver, what you want to relay to your audience. Organize these points logically as much as possible. Try to think about what do you think should they know first? What's the most important concept that you want to present to them? And then go to the least important. Or maybe do it vice versa. You could also incorporate facts and real-life experiences for your examples. And then make sure that you manage your time well because sometimes extemporaneous speeches are time-bound, okay? You only have limited amount of time to deliver the entire speech and, of course, get your message across to your audience. And, of course, rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Next, we have impromptu speeches. These are speeches that are delivered at the spur of the moment. There is no planning, okay, that could be done before you deliver the speech. And usually the speaker is not scheduled to speak. It's not even your task to deliver the speech in the first place. Here are some speaking situations wherein you might be asked to deliver an impromptu speech. So take for example, if you are part of an event and then suddenly you are asked to say a few words, or sometimes during your first day at work or in class, or even during an interview, you are asked certain questions that you have not prepared for, all right? So those could be impromptu speeches as well. Some advantages in delivering impromptu speeches is that it seems more spontaneous and natural speaking because it's very organic. Since you have not prepared for it, whatever it is you know about the topic or whatever it is that you know about how to deliver a speech, it's just what you are going to be using, okay? So it's more natural and it has room for errors. Similarly, since it's an impromptu speech, you tend to be more focused and brief because you want to end the speech as quickly as possible. So therefore, you only try to relay what you know that the audience will benefit from. Some disadvantages of impromptu speeches include the tendency to be disorganized since you don't have time to prepare for it. You still, in your head, are outlining it. So sometimes it tends to be disorganized. Sometimes there's also a tendency for you to lack connection with the audience because you are thinking about it, so you cannot really connect with them right away. And for inexperienced speakers and beginners, delivering an impromptu speech might be nerve-wracking. Sometimes it could even be difficult for them. Here are some tips for delivering an effective impromptu speech. So once you are requested to say something, try to pause for a moment and then use that little amount of time to plan in your head what you are about to say, okay? So utilize as much as possible those pauses. Utilize those very minuscule amount of time to think about it first before saying it out loud. Next step is to state your main point briefly and deliver it at a pace your audience will follow or can follow. And of course, as a speaker, you always have to say thank you at the end of the speech. Now, there are also times wherein you have to deliver these speeches depending on the situation. The first thing that you have to consider is the purpose and the type of delivery. How are you going to deliver it? But there are also an element of the context. Different situations call for different kinds of delivery. Okay, so take for example, when you are speaking to a specific audience size, or when you are speaking in an open air venue or outside a building, what are you supposed to do? When you are speaking in different venues, for example, you were invited into multiple speaking engagements in one day. There are also instances where you might be asked to speak with a microphone. So what are you going to do? How are you going to deliver the speech? And of course, there are instances wherein you have to speak with a podium or a lectern or even in front of a stage. How are you going to move? How are you going to present yourself? When you are asked to speak to a specific audience size, usually the audience size depends on the venue size itself. If the venue is small, then expect a smaller sized audience. If the venue is large, for example, a coliseum or an arena, then definitely your audience will be larger in number. Now, how do you speak to a specific audience size? You can determine your approach with your audience. If it's a smaller size, you could be more intimate and personal in your delivery. And for a larger size, it has to be more formal because there are more people listening to you and expected to be a formal event. Now, this could be challenging and intimidating because, of course, if it's an intimate, smaller size, there would be less people or fewer number of people listening into you, more opportunities for them to critique whatever it is that you are doing in front of them, okay? But if it's a larger size audience, then it might be challenging to deliver your speech and the number itself could already be intimidating. Now, some tips is before you even go to the venue, before you even deliver it in front of an audience, make sure that you ask the organizers who invited you in the first place. What is the estimated number of the audience in order for you to adjust the kind of delivery that you will be doing? And of course, practice, practice, practice as well. What if you are asked to speak in an open-air venue or outside a building? Some examples of open-air venues include open courts or grounds, football fields, or even farms. So when you are speaking in an open-air venue or outside a building, an advantage of this is that you feel more relaxed due to the atmosphere of the venue. However, as a disadvantage, you might encounter a lot of communication barriers. This includes physical noise, inattentive audiences, your own personal discomfort. The weather could also be a barrier, and of course, possible absence of technology such as audio-visual equipment because it might be difficult for the organizers, of course, to build such or to organize such in that particular venue. And since that is the case, since there will be a lot or there might be a lot of communication barriers present, you will be forced to make adjustments, especially in the way that you project your voice. If it's an open air venue, obviously you need to speak louder than usual in order for your listeners, your audience to hear you better. Here are some tips. Of course, check the venue prior to your speaking engagement. Know the place itself. Ask the organizers about the availability of equipment. If they have a microphone that they would want you to use, or if it's a megaphone or any other forms of voice amplification, in order for you, of course, not to strain your voice too much. Challenge yourself on how you can also get and maintain the attention of your audience. What tricks could you pull up on your sleeves? What tricks can you use to engage your audience? Another tip for speaking in an open air venue is using the outdoor setting or venue to your advantage. Okay, so you could use the surroundings as a way for you to jumpstart your speech or as an example to support your main point. And of course, practicing will help you as well. Now, there will be instances wherein you might be asked to speak in different venues. It might be the same speech or you are going to be talking about the same topic, but you have to deliver it in different places at the same day. Speaking venues that vary according to size might include classrooms, meeting or conference rooms, ballrooms, social halls, auditoriums, covered courts, open courts, etc. So you might be asked to speak in an enclosed room or in an open air venue at the same day. So you need to really make adjustments to it. An advantage of speaking in different venues is that as a speaker, you will be exposed to different communicative situations. You will be presented with different challenges. You will overcome these different challenges or you will be forced to overcome these different challenges, which of course will add to your public speaking experience. Having those different opportunities are still experience, no matter how bad or good it was for you. You could always learn from those experiences. A disadvantage of this is that, as I have mentioned earlier, you have to make a lot of adjustment and sometimes they are big. For example, in nonverbal cues, your volume of voice might be different for each and every venue. The body language that you would use, you need to adapt to the audience. What if each venue also have different sets of audiences, okay? Even your facial expression will also change all throughout those venues. Some tips when you are asked to speak in different venues include checking the venue or venues days before your scheduled speech, and make sure that you arrive early, even hours, so you could determine the adjustments that you have to make. For a large venue, you need to speak more slowly. Use pauses frequently to highlight the most important ideas of your speech, and make sure that your facial expressions and gestures are appropriate. When you use visual aids, make sure that they are also visible and you have the capacity to use those visual aids. In a smaller venue, your audience will get to see you up close. Therefore, you need to manage your notes very well when you use them and adjust your nonverbal cues as much as possible. Practice, practice, practice will also help. Now, what if you were asked to speak with a microphone? The microphone's main function is, of course, to increase the volume of your voice, not to clarify the pronunciation and enunciation of your words. Okay, it's a voice amplification device. It will not help you clarify your pronunciation and even your enunciation. So how are you going to utilize your microphone? With a microphone, you can easily get the attention of your audience because of the loudness of your voice. That's an advantage. But using a microphone can also be challenging because there is always a tendency to underuse it or overuse it, okay? So sometimes if you use it too much, then it will hurt the ears of your listeners. So you have to be careful with how you modulate the volume of your voice as well as you are using the microphone. Tips on using a microphone as you deliver a speech: make sure to always check the microphone first if it functions well. We do not want the microphone to be giving up on us in the middle of the speech. And even if that's the case, the organizers of the event or you yourself, if you're the organizer, needs to have a solid backup. So you need to have extra microphones at your disposal. Check if your voice in the microphone is audible enough as well. Sometimes even if you speak softly using a microphone, the projection of it on the speakers is also soft. So it might not be audible for your listeners as well, especially in larger venues. In a small venue, you may not be able to use a microphone, but of course, you need to manage your voice's volume as well. And last but not the least is to practice, practice, practice. How about if you are speaking with a podium or a lectern? Now, what is a podium or a lectern? It is a reading desk with a stand and a slanted top. Now, some advantages of speaking with a podium or lectern is that since there is a place for you to put your notes, you can use your notes. That is why having a podium or a lectern during extemporaneous speeches work well, because you can always put your speaking notes on the slanted top. Now, the lectern can also be used as a means to hide or cover your own personal nervousness or stage fright since you have to stand behind it. However, an advantage of this include, since you are able to hide it, your entire body is hidden. So usually your hands are behind the podium or holding onto the podium, which will not really help enhance your message. Remember that your hands could also be used to do gestures. Here are some tips when you are speaking with a podium or a lectern. First and foremost, you need to maintain your good posture. Stand straight and look into your audience. You need to exude confidence. A good posture actually exudes confidence. Avoid gripping the edges of the podium, holding it with both hands. Aside from this, also avoid hiding them behind the podium. Again, as I have mentioned earlier, you need to use your hands for your gestures. You can point to your audience. You could use that to enhance whatever it is that you are saying. For extemporaneous and impromptu speakers, on the other hand, try to step to the side occasionally once you have composed yourself. Okay, so at the very beginning of your speech, you can stand in front of the podium. But once you get comfortable in the middle, you can try to move to the side. Try to walk a little bit away from the podium so that your listeners, your audience can see you. And in this way as well, you can effectively use your gestures. It's an opportunity for you to make eye contact. It's also an opportunity for you to connect more with your audience. And again, just like the others, you can practice, practice, practice to make your speech better. Here are my sources and references for this lecture. See you again next time.